How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, and today I get the pleasure to talk to Blake Northcott. How are you doing, Blake?
Good. Thank you so much for having me on, Omar. I love your show. I love your channel, and
Thank
I'm
you.
so honored to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you here, and you're going to be talking about a very recognizable character, but in this time around in the comics universe. So, big thank you to Dynamite for helping put this together. And I do want to talk a little bit about your background, like your work in comics and before comics, and where it originated from, like where your the idea that ooh, that would be fun to write comics. Where
Right.
did it come from?
Yeah, for sure. Before we get into that, I quickly want to say congratulations on having over 100,000 subscribers. I
Thank
saw
you.
that it popped up recently, and I never got a chance to tell you congratulations. So, what an achievement! Way to go.
Thank you so much. You were so sweet. Thank you.
Well, it's so wonderful to have places like this in comics to be able to come and chat. So, I really appreciate it. So, good job.
Thank you. I seriously, that means a lot. That was really sweet. But enough about me. Let's talk about you. Tell me a little bit about yourself and
Okay.
how your journey with comic books began. Was it something that you were passionate about when you were a kid? Was it a cartoon you saw? Like, what exactly brought you to the world of comics? And of course, we could talk about your screenwriting and your novels. So, yeah, how did you even get started on this journey?
I love these kinds of questions because everybody has such a different sort of roadmap for how they get into doing what they're doing, right? So
Mhm.
it's interesting to hear how did that happen. For me, I was always very interested in pop culture. I would say my first ever really deep dive into the fantasy world and everything that I love so much was probably movies, actually, like through Ghostbusters and Back to the Future and these movies that really just captured my interest in, fantasy, sci-fi, all this stuff. And then later on in my teens, I had a boyfriend who was very interested in comics. So I was surrounded by them whenever I'd go to his basement, and just there's posters. We would go to, we had a bunch of comic stores back, that we would go hang out at.
Mhm.
So that really got me interested in it. I thought the artwork was fantastic. I loved the combination of the storytelling with the art. So yeah, I ended up actually going to university. I have a degree from McMaster University in English literature. So I studied English classics with a minor in art history.
Okay.
So had the interest, wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. Ended up getting out of university and going into insurance, which is the furthest thing from being creative, I can tell you. I
Uh-huh.
did that for a while in Canada, and it really was not for me, and I felt really bored, and it wasn't the thing I wanted to keep pursuing. So I thought, you know what, when I had the opportunity, I said, I'm going to take it and I'm going to start trying to write. So I just did everything I could. I worked for CBS. They had a section called Man Cave Daily where I would write articles getting to interview UFC fighters, which my son thinks is the coolest thing in the world right now, that I talk to, like Chris Weidman and Alistair Overeem. He's like, I can't believe that. So I did that. I worked with CBR, a couple places, and then I had been
Did you
online
say
and
did you say CBR? I'm sorry.
yeah, a couple of
Comic Book
articles with
Resources.
CBR.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So interesting. I had the interest in comics for a while, obviously. And
Mhm.
Mark Miller at the time, we had been, I think, like tweeting or something on Twitter. And he had said he was a fan of some of my writing and asked me if I would be able to do and help with the editorials in the back pages of some of his comics. So at the time, it was like Jupiter's Legacy, I think MPH, Kick Ass Volume 3, and Chrononauts. So that was a really great use of being able to be an editor, and I also was curating the art. There was a fan art section where fans would submit artwork, and I
Mhm.
loved doing this. This was really fun, and that's where I think a lot of people maybe first saw my face, because there's a little picture of me under the column in the back. So I think some people were like, oh, this is who this person is. And then from there, I went on to getting to write for Aspen. Aspen was my first full series I wrote for Fathom in volume 6,
Mm-hmm.
which was so fun. I loved that. That was right up my alley. Great experience. I mean, the artist I got to work with was Marco Renna. He was this Italian artist. He's incredible. And they really let me flex a lot of my creativity, and I wanted to incorporate some kind of crazier elements. I remember in one of the scenes I wanted to have like a rear naked choke or something happening, and I remember trying to explain it to my Italian artist who didn't speak English completely, so we were having like a little bit of barriers going back and forth, and I had to send him like YouTube videos of people doing this move saying, this is what I need you to draw. So but it was really fun. I loved getting, that opportunity was wonderful. And yeah, and then I went on from there. I don't know if that explains my start enough.
No, it completely does. I loved hearing the fact that you did not give up on the thing you wanted to do. So
Yeah.
you sought after different outlets. That's really cool that Miller found your stuff interesting and had you become an editor. And as it happens in comics, you tend to build a lot of connections and networking and get to know people behind the scenes. And eventually, you get to know. So what was the very first thing you wrote then
So
that
I
you
should mention that at the time I was writing novels. So he
okay?
had, heard of that. I was
I've
regular.
heard of novels. I've heard of
Yes,
novels. There are
novels.
those books without pictures, right?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Uh,
Okay.
I did the hybrid model when I put out my novels because I had seen these books in England, which I fell in love with. The folio editions, where
Oh,
they're these
yeah.
incredible editions of novels, and then they incorporate really kind of interesting deluxe editions. So they'll have, foil covers and engravings and really cool illustrations done throughout. And I thought, what a wonderful idea to have it be interspersed. So you're getting the best of both worlds. Like people who love the art get some art and they also get, a novel. So I kind of, mimicked this when I did a crowdfunding campaign for my first novel series for Arena Mode. And that's the way I did it. I said, I'm going to have people that I know or people in the industry, and I'm going to hire them to do busts or different like commissions for artwork, and then put it into my novel. So I think that was one of the selling points really that helped get my novel, become a bestseller on Amazon and get so much attention.
So once you had written your novels, like, did you think it'd be kind of cool to write comics?
I really at the time I was focusing on the novels. I always enjoyed and loved comics, but I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to do this and then head into comics.
Hmm.
Um, and they're really completely like different. When you're writing a novel, you have so much opportunity to expand your ideas. There's no time like constraints. And when you're doing comics, it's so different, and you have very limited real estate to get your ideas across, and you have to be more concise with your words, and there's just a lot of differences between the two. So I don't know, but I really felt like I enjoyed the collaboration of it, being able to work with a team. The art side was just so beautiful, having that to help tell the story. And so, yeah, it's so exciting to be, getting to work in different areas with the writing. And I love them both. I can't choose.
So now that you've played the role of editor and now writer, h- I guess how did you I don't want to say cut any corners, but how did you write differently with that kind of mind? Like, because I always wondered how editors eventually would write comics, knowing that somebody was going to be reading this and editing it too. So I don't know, like if how it felt like going from an editor's perspective to the writer's perspective and then just sending it out to be checked?
It was really difficult. You have to kind of bet on yourself. You just have to get to a point. It's like any creation, you know, I'm sure artists feel this way. I'm not a painter or an artist, but you work on something for so long, you know, it's like your blood, sweat, and tears go into this. And when you reach a point and you're like, okay, this is the best version of this piece of art that I can make,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to bet on yourself to put it out there, take a deep breath, and hope everybody else enjoys your vision. But it is a very scary thing to put out because, you know, you've put so much into it. It's like your baby, your creation, you know, and you're sharing it with the world. So you want everyone to love it, obviously. But it is scary, and you do have to take those risks, I think, to get the reward, to get people on board. And I was really lucky because at the time I had a voice already where I had been developing through my writing, and Twitter was taking off, and I had kind of developed a fan base of people that were kind of following my work. And
Mm-hmm.
when it came out on Kickstarter, I was really lucky because this was back, like, I want to say around 2013-ish, and it was when the whole start of crowdfunding was just taking off. So there wasn't a lot of competition. There was, you know, there still were books coming out, and there was a lot of, you know, interest in it, but people were still kind of like, what is this? How does this work? Is it, you know, like, I'm not too sure about it. And I had to really lean on my fans and interact with them and kind of, you know, let them know how important it was to me that they were part of it, and having them have their names in the back of the book when it was published. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of the coolest parts because I still get people to this day who have the book, have their name in the back, and they have it like on their shelf, or they'll bring it to see me at a con, and it means like so much to me because I'm like, no, those people have followed my career like throughout the entire time, and they're still like, oh, I want to come and say hi, I have your book. So that is the biggest like compliment I could ever get, is when, you know, someone's followed you, and they know you from before, and they bring works that you've worked on previously. I think that is just, I love that.
So you immediately were connected to your audience because of social media.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, good for you.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting world we live in. You gotta, I guess, just go with the times and what's happening. I mean, right now, like, I still follow with the people that in those certain social media platforms that I had
Mhm.
before, but you know, there's new platforms that take off all the time. And like, let's say like with, I don't know, TikTok, I'm looking at my kids, they're the TikTok generation, and there's so many cool ways that they're interacting with, you know, authors and writers, and they'll come up and show me and say, oh, you need to do this, mom, this is what they're doing on TikTok. Like, there's book talks, there's all of this stuff that wasn't happening like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So I just think it's really interesting to see the organic nature of how it transcends, how people want to interact and be a part of the creative process too. They want to, you know, interact with the creators as much as what they're reading, which is interesting.
I always find that side of things interesting when a creator would reach out or rather reply back to a fan or somebody that's critiquing their work. I don't see how you all do it. I think if I was a creator, I would just disappear from social media. I think more power to you if you're out there and, you know, replying back to fans. Because just remember being a kid and just the people at the comic book store were just so argumentative, no matter what it was, in whether it was the X-Men's lives or, you know, these people's. I do it too. I hold a lot of these characters near and dear to my heart,
Yeah.
and if they're near and dear to my heart, if something goes bad, then of course I put the blame on somebody. So I don't know how you all do it, how you all reply back to people. And
Well,
I, because you know, for every positive comment out there, I'm
yes.
sure there's a negative
Of
comment too.
course,
And
you know, it's one of those industries too. You have to have a thick skin to be
mhm,
creative person, because not everyone's going to love your creation. Not everyone will be on your side. It's what you mentioned, I don't know how you can do that. It's like when I look at people who go up and dance in front of other people, or they sing in front of other people. That's my worst nightmare. Like, I would have a nightmare about that, because I can't sing at all. I can't dance at all. So I understand that feeling of terror, right? Like,
So
oh,
you don't karaoke.
this.
You're not
No,
karaoke. Okay.
don't ever ask me to do that. But, putting out a piece of writing, I guess now, especially because it's been so many years, I feel more obviously confident in it. But at the beginning, it was very scary. But I was taking a big risk, because I thought, I don't want to go back to my old job. I want to pursue a career in
Mhm.
writing. This is my chance. Like, if I don't do it now, when is this going to happen? Right? I'm just going to go back to another insurance job and get stuck there for another 10 years. So you have to bet on yourself and just do it. Take the plunge.
Some good advice. And you're right. Absolutely. You you have to okay, you have to have thick skin.
Yeah. Like, to do
And
what you're doing, like, isn't easy. Obviously, not everyone could do this. You have put
oh,
so
and
much
I've had my share
into
of
this.
people that don't like me, and I think, everybody's different. I don't know, how other people deal with it. I just, like, grew up in whatever. I think I realized at an early age that not everybody's gonna like me, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's
You just
uh,
have to be yourself, and
yeah, I I think that's really cool. So what led you to this new project with Dynamite and Barbarella? Because this
yeah.
is really exciting. Barbarella, of course, has a history in comics, originated in comics, and then of course the movie that came out, and now, well, I don't know if rumors are flying around, but there's a new movie in the works, perhaps. So
Yes.
yeah, and people want to know about Amy Lee and Evanescence. I promise, I wanted to ask her about that too. But tell me about Barbarella. How did that project? How did this happen? Did you seek it out? Were you a fan, or did Dynamite reach out and be like, "Hey, Blake"?
Right. So, okay, going back, I had worked with Dynamite previously. I want to
Mhm.
say in Halloween time, 2018, I wrote a Vampirella Halloween story for them, which was a wonderful experience. I had so much fun. She's such another, iconic character. Excuse me. And I got to work with Anthony Marquise. I adore him. He's so nice. We had a great time. So, I actually ended up working with him again, because, like, 2 years ago, he was asking me to come and work at the Qbert School, and I got to teach, which was so wonderful. Doing that was amazing. That's another thing I'd love to talk about. But yeah, so I did Vampirella already, and then I was talking to Dynamite for after that. We were looking for a mutual project to work together on.
Okay.
And I had heard about, they had mentioned Barbarella might be coming up. Would you be interested? And I said, of course. She's such an iconic character. Obviously, I knew Jane Fonda. That's where I was first actually, aware of her, was through the movie, and seeing how iconic she was throughout pop culture, and just incredible sci-fi. I just loved everything about the fantasy of it. So yeah, so they approached me to work on it, and they had already attached Anna. That we knew we were going to be working together, and she's an incredible Anna Morozova, an incredible European artist. And so we've been actually working on this behind the scenes, I want to say, for almost between a year and a year and a half.
Oh,
So
okay.
things take a while sometimes in publishing, this. And it was interesting, because when we first started, Sydney Sweeney had been sort of attached to produce or star in the movie, but we didn't really know back then. She was just really, I think, more in Euphoria, and she wasn't as big a star. So over the past year, as we've been working on the comic, we've just noticed, like, her star has just taken off. She is, this kind of like iconic figure now in movies. She's doing like romantic comedies, and I think that she's just such a really great, um, the perfect choice to play Barbarella because she has that parallel to being funny, sexy. She has this vibe about her, this confidence. She's, you know, open to discussing her sexuality, poking fun at herself. She did a hilarious skit on Saturday
Saturday.
Night Live where I was dying laughing. It was like a Hooter skit. So people saw that side of her, the comedian, and also this like very confident woman. So I just think she is also a powerhouse in the fashion industry. You know, when she walks the red carpet, people notice. She's getting like huge brand endorsements from designer brands, and she just embodies like so many of the characteristics of Barbarella. So that's really interesting to me as well, that, you know, now that we made the announcement, there's a lot more attention, I think, because she was sort of attached in this way of being the star and producing the film. But yeah, it's been going on for, I'd say, almost a year and a half now, and I'm having a great time working with Anna and the whole team at Dynamite. Matt Idelson is our editor, and it's just going fabulously. And I love Anna's art. She has such a beautiful kind of flowing, I'm trying to describe it, and I can't even, like, very dynamic poses. Like her poses look like they're floating across the screen. They're just gorgeous. So yeah, I'm really excited for people to see the art and see the story and get excited about it with us.
When you're working with Anna on this particular title, how how does it work? Like, do you write the script, send it over to Anna? Like, do you get to see the artwork before the editors, or like, because I know every publisher does it differently, and everybody does it differently depending on, of course, the artist, um, or I guess the editor. But how, when do you get to see the artwork?
So every, like you said, every team works differently. Every, I guess, writer works differently. I tend to do full scripts and then send them over. So I'll complete the entire first, let's say, issue, send it to her, and then she's very good about coming back and asking me a question she might have. So we just clarify everything, because there's a lot of things that she has to kind of, I don't give her a lot of detail about, like, let's say an example is designing a new ship, because there's a
Mhm.
lot of spaceships, you know, things happening. I trust my artists that they are going to have such a cool design, cooler than anything I could like tell her to try to do. So I just really trust her to come up with something. And basically she does thumbnails and then sends back like finished work that is some of the most polished work I've ever seen, coming back from an artist. Because sometimes I get stuff back from artists when I'm working on books that's a little more sketchy. Um,
Mhm.
and it looks like, oh, okay, they haven't like really completed everything and this is what it's going to be, but I don't see the finished thing until after. But with her, no, her work is so polished and just looks like it could be almost, I want to say, like a poster. It's so perfect. I'm like, this is amazing. And I just usually write on the script, like, Anna, make a spaceship. She's gonna nail this. Like, I don't even have to give her direction because she just knows, you know, what we're looking for.
Well,
So
I've seen her work in 2000 AD.
yeah,
I think she did some stuff for Judge Dredd, if I'm not mistaken. So it's really cool that both of you are lined up to be doing this. Now, is this going to be? I know Dynamite has published Barbarella in the past from different creators. Is this going to be a case of a mini series, or what have they greenlit so far?
yeah, so I just wanted to say this is Anna's first North American kind of debut.
Mhm.
So I know like people are going to be stunned by her artwork who haven't seen it yet. And she's just fabulous to work with. And yeah, it's a mini to start. So I think it's 6 to 8 issues, I believe, right now. And we're just having such a great time. Time permitting, we'll go from there and see what happens. That would be great.
Okay.
And I actually have a really funny story I have to tell you, because somebody's asked me before about the picture of the two of us together where I look like I'm going like this and I'm introducing her. So we had been last year at New York Comic Con. We were both there together, and
Mhm.
we were both going to overlap for one day. So I knew she was going to be there. We're texting each other madly, like in the madness of New York, trying to, you know,
Oh, I was there It's
It's
insane.
it's like you can't even get through Artist
Oh,
Alley.
and there was no internet. There was no like signal last year. We had that issue on Friday. Yeah.
So the same thing, we're trying to like, what time am I meeting her? Like, where am I meeting her? I'm trying to figure it out, get to her. We meet up and we'd already been working together. We're so excited. So we thought, why don't we take a photo together? And then when it's announced, like we held up a board, just like a whiteboard. And it
Mhm.
looks like we were going to superimpose the cover on the board, but I'm
Oh,
just going like this. And they published the picture without the comic.
without the comic.
So it just looks like I'm going, and here's Anna.
Now, at that time, you
So
all had been working on Barbarella, though,
yeah,
right? But nobody knew
nobody knew
until
that, yeah.
I think it
When
was this San Diego Comic Con. I think is when the announcement was
yes,
made, right? Yeah.
yes. So exciting. So anyway, that was the story of if you see this photo of me looking so like Vanna White here in the middle of Artist Alley, that's what's happened. And yeah, we had our picture together, which is funny.
And how far are you into writing Barbarella?
I'm trying to remember. Right now, I think we're on issue 3 right now.
Mhm.
It's coming up to 4. So yeah, it's going great. We're having a wonderful time. I love the way the team works together. It's all very supportive, super fun. A lot of funny emails going around, trying to describe the aliens. How are the aliens acting or what's happening here? It's just really funny. I get a kick out of it.
What's your favorite thing about working on Barbarella? And how is your Barbarella like where did you grow inspiration for your version of Barbarella?
Right. I mean, I think almost any time. So whenever a new writer takes over an existing property,
Mhm.
they always want to put a little bit of their own spin on it or add something to it. And it's
Yeah.
fun to take license a little bit and see where you can go and what you're gonna kind of go on a new direction.
Mhm.
But then, the fans are also sometimes looking for that original character voice. And I think that what we're doing in this iteration of it is that we're going back a little bit to the classic Barbarella feel, that retro futuristic vibe, which was so
Oh,
cool and
it
dynamic in 1960s, 70s.
Mhm.
I'm really leaning into that. And also, like you said, how am I being inspired? I mean, I would say Sydney Sweeney is almost my inspiration for this in a way, just like how maybe Ryan Reynolds is inspiring, people for Deadpool or, Robert Downey Jr. inspires like Iron Man and, other different iterations of the character. I think once you picture an actor or someone in your mind playing that person or, you feel like they can embody the character, it inspires you. And so sometimes you just can't unsee that in your mind. So I'm using that as a little bit of my inspiration here. But yeah, definitely I love leaning into, like I said, back to that real retro futurism, the campiness, that campy style, and that imagery, which has echoed throughout, since the movie back to the 60s, is what people have been really drawn to her. And she's left such an impression on pop culture. So I love that about it.
I I think so too. I think a lot of people out there may not even know that it originated as a French comic
Right.
and probably know the movies more. I think about well, I mean, there have been a lot of comics like that, especially here in America, that people didn't realize were based on graphic novels or original comic books. So I think she's definitely one of those. I remember because I had no idea there were comics up until I think in the 90s when I saw a collection
Right.
of some French comics that were translated into maybe it was even the early odds that were translated in English. I had no idea that was even available. I had no idea it was a comic book. I just thought it was a movie.
Yeah. Well, a
Man,
lot of
so
movies is
wrong.
that's how we get introduced to the character. Some people find the movies, like that's how it was for me with Blade. I remember loving this movie.
Oh, the Wesley Snipes movie.
Yes.
Yeah, I
I
love that movie
didn't
too.
know even then at the time, I did not know it was like based on a character for a comic or anything. And I just loved the movie. So I think a lot of people that can be their first introduction. And
Mhm.
it's so funny because yeah, the Jane Fonda effect. I mean, she was so iconic. And it's funny because I watched an interview that she had done with like think with Vogue or one of these big publications about her roles throughout history, all the different movies she's been in. And she did a segment on Barbarella, and she was talking about how she had been married to the director at the time. Roger Vadim was her husband, and he had asked his ex-wife, Brigitte Bardot, to be the character. So they turned her down, and it ended up being Jane Fonda. And I just thought that was hilarious. She was talking about how it was such an iconic, very like kind of like everyone who saw it was like, wow, like the psychedelicness of it, the music of it.
Yeah.
Like think about, I don't know if everyone knows, but the how Duran Duran was a villain in the movie played by Milo O'Shea, and that was the inspiration for the band name Duran Duran. Like we have so many things that have
I don't
come
even
from this. It's
think
just
about
crazy.
that.
That's wild.
I never think about that because it's just part of pop culture to
Yeah,
me. And it's a movie, what 60s, right? Like late 60s,
yeah. I think
67, 68, I think, when it came out. And stands to me the test of time. I thought I, I'm honestly surprised. And I have no idea how well it did.
right.
I'm honestly surprised there weren't follow-ups on that
Yeah.
movie. Like immediate sequels lined up for that movie. Because I thought, to me, it was just so funny. Like it was so different than anything else that was coming out at that time like
Right. I
this.
think, but like we mentioned, talking about the European movement at that time, the retro futurism that was happening, that was a real example of the elements of design and fashion and music, the sets, everything that was happening there was echoed in this film as well. So maybe it was too sexy and a little too ahead of its time. I don't know.
For 1968,
Yes, it might
maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
American. I don't know. Like maybe the Europeans felt it more as. Plus the French Jean-Claude Forest is the original French writer and artist who worked on it. So that being maybe it was because it was more of that influence with the French, slant to it that everyone was in Europe kind of gravitated towards it a little bit more. I don't know.
Oh, so it had that like European
Yeah,
risque factor
really,
to it that we weren't ready for in America.
maybe I don't know.
Maybe you're right. Yeah. So you're working on Barbarella,
Yes.
and we know how far you are into the script and how far the comic is, and we will see where that goes from there. What else have you been up to? Are we looking at novels, screenwriting? Where are you these days?
Yes, so I am working on a brand new novel, which I am just literally signing everything this week. So I can't unfortunately talk about it, but it will be announced shortly. And
Mhm.
it's very exciting. It's going to be, I'm trying to think how much I can say here. It's going to be um, I literally just got the contract like an hour ago, so I'm dying to talk about this. It's so like, frustrating. I'm like, what can I say? It's working with someone who works in Hollywood, who's
Mhm.
a well-known Hollywood actor, and we're working on this together. Everybody knows who he is, so when this is announced, it's going to be, he's the co-writer on the story with me, and we're having a great time on it. He's the inspiration for the lead in the story. And how else can I
Now
put
I want to guess if his name rhymes with Rihanna Keeves, but
no,
I'm not gonna do that just in case, because you never know.
you never
Well,
know.
like Keanu Reeves is
Well,
the
he's
character of Berserker in the
berserker
comic book.
extraordinaire, right?
Yeah,
He's already working on his own version of his
his own universe, his own
yes. So it's not
multiverse.
but
Okay.
so that's going to be coming. I did last year. I just finished working with Weird Tales, and I loved that I got to work on the 100th anniversary anthology edition of the Weird
Mhm.
Tales. And so I have a story in there, and it's also published through Blackstone Publishing. And that was why part of the reason I was at New York Comic Con was I was getting to do a signing with them. This incredible publisher that has books, coming out all the time. They had Robert Downey Jr. did a book with them. Whoopi Goldberg has a book with them. I believe they did the Shogun book for the series that was on TV, like the FX series. They have the actual novel that was the reprint. So it's called Blackstone Publishing, a wonderful publisher. I did that. I'm just trying to think of all the things I'm doing now. I have a screenplay that I'm also working on, which has also been happening throughout the year. I've been adapting my grimoire novel, and I'm working with someone who is very talented and in the industry, and I'm very excited about it, and it's like in progress, so it's something that we're hoping to be able to share more of soon. But that's another thing where I can't really discuss too much of it yet because things are happening behind the scenes and I don't want to jinx anything. But it's fun because we are like getting to do fun stuff like dream casting. Who would you want to cast as, the lead in your movie or whatever, and or in your series or whatever you're doing. I think all this part of the Hollywood part of it is really fun. Also fantasy, like getting to use your creativity. It's just really fun and exciting. I love it. And yeah, I'm also traveling. I'm going to Paris next week for a signing. I've been invited by Album Comics to come, so I'm very excited about this. I'll be signing some of my North LA Grimoire comics, some previous comics, some Catwoman, some different things I worked on. And this is the first time I'm going to be in Europe for a comics signing. So I have a bunch of limited edition Sean Gordon Murphy covers, which just flew off the shelves, and they're saying they have a ton of people asking for them. So I'm really excited to get to sign those with, friends and fans. And yeah, so that's happening on August 29th. If you're in Paris, come by. I'd love to meet you. Say hello. Yeah, anyone? Come on, fly over.
Maybe if I'm in Paris, I can never keep up with my schedule.
I know.
So when is that again?
August 29th, Album Comics in, I've got it written down, I think 6 to 8 o'clock, something like that. But all the information is posted on my socials. So if anyone is interested in going, you can just come to my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all the information is posted there. Actually, Album Comics has it posted there too.
When will Barbarella be out, the first issue?
Yes, so the FOC date is coming up, I think August 19th, and the first issue comes out October 2nd in your local comic stores.
Okay, so remember that. That's very important. What's the FOC again?
It's coming out to local comic stores on October 2nd, and the FOC, I think, is August 19th.
So it's right around the corner in case you're wondering about that first issue. And much like
great, by the way, I just have to say there's some great variant covers.
That's what I was going to talk about. Like Dynamite always does these amazing variant covers.
They really do.
I'll actually leave a link in the description of the video once I get the link to the covers. But do you know who some of the cover artists are?
I do. Now I wrote down their names. I have to find, sorry. Because I was looking at, okay, yeah, so Joseph Michael Listner, Annie Wu, Richard Pace, and there's another one by an amazing cosplayer that I love. She's so nice. Faces by Reishi, but her name is Rachel Holland. So she did an incredible cosplay variant, which looks awesome. So there's a whole bunch, and I believe even Anna has one coming, and I can't remember if hers is for the first or the second issue, but those are all going to be eligible to be able to order.
And I think Joseph Michael Listner has a metallic cover too.
Ooh, really? I heard they were doing metallic covers, but I wasn't sure which ones were associated with that. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like. That's what I was, because I knew they usually do one, so I think he's the one. And of course he was the artist on Dawn. So yeah, I'm looking at the cover right now. So awesome. And that one will be a limited edition one too.
Whoa.
How did you become involved with the Kubert School? Talk a little bit about that earlier. And I think this is really important when it comes to passing on this type of knowledge to the next generation.
Yeah. I always encourage people who are trying to get in the industry to do as much like networking, visiting cons, trying to go to panels, interacting with different people in the industry that you can. I think that is really important because, a lot of what you do when you're writing, or I'm using writing, but I guess even if you're being an artist, is quite solitary. You're in your home, you're not interacting with people, and it's a part of the job that you don't necessarily think you're going to have to really embrace, but I think it really helps in terms of getting exposure and being able to meet new people and just feel supported in the industry as well. So I ended up going, and I had met a bunch of people, and one person that I worked with, I mentioned at Dynamite, was Anthony Marquise, and
Hmm.
we worked together on the Vampirella special. And so I think it was years later, he ended up purchasing the Joe Kubert School, and he's running it now. And he asked me, he reached out and said, I need someone to teach one of the classes. Writing cinematic comics was the name of the class. And he said, would you be interested? And he knew I was writing like screenplays and that I was working in that part, and I was crossing over. So I said, of course, I would love to be a part of it. Now, at that point, I said, of course, I want to help, but I had never really taught before. So it really was such an eye-opening experience because it made me really realize like how you interact with people, and you're trying to explain what you're doing and why you're doing it and the reasoning behind your choices, and each decision you make along the way. It's difficult being a teacher. Wow, like I had no idea it was so difficult. So I'm giving props out there to all the teachers. I've had great teachers in my time, and I just really never had tried teaching before. So it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. It's so rewarding because now, I mean, some of the people who were my students in the class still follow me and come up to me and say, "Oh, I would love it if, like, I don't know, ask for a blurb for one of their books they have coming out," or they're following what I'm doing and they're going to be somewhere and they want to know if we can meet and say hello. And it's just so wonderful to have that experience and to see they're still pursuing their dream. They're still trying to be in the business. I love that. And I hope that if I help them just a little bit along the way, that's wonderful. But I'm also a lifetime student myself. Like, I always try to keep learning about the craft. I'm always reading new books, watching, podcasts, or learning as much as I can, working with other mentors, whatever it is, to try to, become the best artist that I can be and evolve into that myself, which I feel like is part of the joy of getting to be a creative profession. Um, just trying to make the best possible creations we can.
I think that's wonderful. And I think s- so. You mentioned something a little earlier about how it, you're giving props to teachers, because I do think it takes a special kind of person to have that like ability to be able to teach, because you may be able to do the craft, you may be able to be great at it, but it's so different to be teaching.
It is.
And not every but you seem like you seem like you have a good I think having a kind heart goes a long way when it comes to teaching, honestly. And having oh my gosh, my wife is a teacher, having patience. So I know that she would agree with that too.
Well, I think you're right. You need patience, understanding, and also, um, I think it's so they're putting themselves out there to try to get better themselves. So you have to like really put yourself out there to help them too. It's not just something you can just half-ass it or whatever. Like, you really have to put everything into it. Um, and I was also teaching like different ages, like adults, and some of them were like barely, like I think like 19, like teenagers, all the way up to adults. So it was a really weird mix of like different all over the place levels too. So it's not like if you're just teaching, oh, everyone here has already written stories or they've already all written comics, right?
Mhm.
So everyone was at a different level, which was a little difficult, but I really think too, there was something that I took online that I found really helpful along the way. There's so many cool places to go now where you can like get information, get help, or meet other people in the industry, or even learn from the pros. So I had found this website, which I'm sure a lot of people online go to, the masterclass, the
Oh
website.
yeah. Hmm.
I loved this. I did this, and I actually entered. I took the James Patterson masterclass, and at the end of it, they were running a contest. So I entered the contest with one of my stories, and I became a semi-finalist at the end of the contest, which was wonderful. So that
That's huge.
that was really fun. Yeah, I won a free MacBook. It was awesome. But I think that getting that experience though was so worthwhile. And there's so many people who are at the top of their game and they're willing to go in there and run these master classes. And I think it's a great opportunity to hear how did they get there, like what are they doing, what little tidbits do they have to offer, how can I learn from them. And that's something anyone can take. You can sign up. It's like, you sign up for a fee to do one course or a whole year of courses. And they're all across the different interests too. Like I was doing a lot of the writing, screenwriting on all those, but they had them for like chess and like cooking and
What?
tennis, like anything you would want to learn about.
Yeah, they became really, really popular during shutdown, like COVID.
Yes,
Because
COVID.
my brother ended up getting, because he just loves learning all the time. He got a bunch of classes, just taking things on things he had no interest in taking. I thought that's really cool, and he bought me some classes
Oh,
on.
that's so cool.
I think it was like what might have been Mark Wade's class of like comics, because they have like uh
Yes.
comic book writers and comic book artists that did that. I don't know how big it is now, but that's so cool that you mentioned that, because I think that is really important. Not a lot of people were aware of these
Yeah.
classes that are done online. They're pre-recorded, of course.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
pre-recorded and you can do them at your own pace, which is great. Because like some weeks I could only do a couple hours, other weeks I wanted to do them all day. So it just depends on your own level of how busy you are. But what a great gift. You can gift someone, like, do you want to learn, how to make ravioli from like this famous chef? Here's a gift of learning how to do that. I mean, I love that. That's incredible. We live in
uh,
such a crazy world that you can do that. I don't work for masterclass, I promise, but like
you
it's
have a coupon
celebrating.
code we could use, coupon code with Blake Northcott's name on
Yes.
it. I'm gonna take one last question because I know you've got to get going. Uh, were you a fan of growing com? Oh, can't even read. Were you a fan of comics growing up? If so, what comics did you read? Did you have a favorite writer or artist?
Okay, so when I was immersed in the boyfriend's basement of comics, I do remember the first comic I ever read was a Danger Girl comic, and I think he also gave me a Fathom. So there was two kind of in his mind girlier versions of comics that he thought I'd like, but the artwork was fast. It was so fascinating.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved the stories. I really got into it, and that's probably what led me also on my love of comics and storytelling. So those were two that I vividly remember first being introduced. Um, and there was a splat poster of, on the wall.
Hell yes, everybody loves Stephen Platt. That guy was awesome.
Yes,
Danger Girl. So you like
I was right in the mix there.
Jeffrey Scott Campbell, and then you had Michael Turner's Fathom. And that's really cool that it kind of came full circle for you and you ended up writing Fathom.
Yeah, like
So
how weird is that? That's really weird.
that's wonderful. All right. I do know that you have to get going because you have a hard stop. And I just want to thank you for being here and thank you everybody for watching. And
Oh,
hit that like button. Go and check out Barbarella when it comes out, or pre-order it because the FOC is right around the corner. When did you say it was again?
August
August.
19th, I believe.
You got
And
4 days to go and pre-order Barbarella #1. So again, Blake, thank you for being here, and thank you for showing that you're passing on that knowledge onto the next generation of people too. I think that's very important.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Omar. I've had a great time chatting with you, and definitely
Absolutely.
I appreciate you having this channel and having me on.
Anytime. You are welcome on anytime. Maybe when you can announce your next project with not Keanu Reeves. Um,
Okay, I'll do that.